All right, I want to welcome everyone. We're back from our Passover break, and I had a mishap also with the site was down for a little bit, but that's still not going to stop us. And now we're in a very hot topic. I probably do this on controversial issues, and that is selecting a rabbi. Selecting a rabbi. Now, we mentioned before there are laws that govern, what Torah may be learned by non-Jews, right, etc. So now what do we have? So now we were explaining what Torah may be taught to non-Jews by Jews. What are they allowed to learn? Now, as we go through this final lesson on Torah study, we're going to see there are rabbis, there are different types of rabbis. What are the requirements? What does it mean? What does it mean to be a rabbi? So the Torah tells me, Book of Numbers, chapter 27, verses 15 and 23. Right, what does the Torah tell me? The Torah says, and Moshe spoke, the Lord saying, "Let the Lord, the God of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, who may go out before them, who may come in before them, and lead them out, and may bring them in, congregation of the Lord. Be not as the sheep which has no shepherd." The Lord said unto Moshe, Take Joshua son of Nun, man whom is spirit, and lay your hand upon him, set up before him Eleazar the priest, for all the congregation, give him a charge in their sight, put your honor upon him, that all congregation of the children of Israel may hear. Shall stand before Eleazar the priest, shall inquire of his children of Israel may hear. He shall stand before Eleazar the priest, shall inquire for him by judgment of the Urim, right before the Lord. At his word shall they go out, at his word they shall come in. Lead all the children of Israel with him, even all the congregation. Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua, set him before Eleazar the priest, and before the entire congregation. Laid his hands upon him, gave him the charge. The Lord spoke by the hand of Moses. And Joshua, son of Nun, full of spirit and wisdom, Moses laid his hand upon him. Children of Israel hearkened unto him, as did the Lord, as he did, and as the Lord commanded him. Right, that's Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 9. And the God said to Moses, Gather unto me 70 men, the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people, and officers over them. Bring them to the tent of meeting. They stand there with you. I will come down and speak with you then. I'll take a spirit which is upon you. Put it upon them. They should bear the burden of the people with you, so that you should not have to bear it alone. Numbers chapter 11, verses 16, 17. Now, what's going on over here? We're talking about rabbinic ordination, rabbi, what we call Semikhah. Semikhah means literally the placing of the hands. Right? So the laying of the hands, the placing of the spirits, that's the first example we have in the Torah, i.e. about rabbinic ordination. That's what we call classical Semikhah. Right? What does Semikhah mean? That's the Hebrew word for ordination. And Joshua went on to ordain others, and they taught their students, ordained them, etc. Now, people think, what does a rabbi mean? It means someone who can teach. A lot of people call rabbis can't teach. Big problem. Right? But that's the classic definition. I mentioned in my class in Turkey Elbow after Shabbos here. And one of the things I mentioned was, a person, Mishnah there says, chapter 2, Mishnah 9, part 5, it says, name Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, you studied a lot of Torah, don't make credit for yourself, but that's what you're created to do. Right? You're going to think, I learned a lot of Torah. Right? So what? so much more to learn. Right? So there's another potential answer here. It's not just about learning Torah, it's about teaching others. But see, you have to have clarity when you teach others. And when a person has clarity of what they know, they can give it over. If they don't have clarity, they won't be able to give it over. They'll be more confused. They'll confuse other people. Someone tells me, I'm going to go to a certain class, a certain quote-unquote rabbi, and, a person heard him speak live. So, okay, tell me what happened. I didn't say anything. He said, tell me what happened. So, he said, Rabbi, you're never going to believe it. I said, what happened? He said, I came out more confused than I went in. Thank you very much. I said, okay, you didn't ask me. You wanted to do it, fine. But the reality is, there are people that shouldn't be teaching. And if that's what it means, right, one definition, right? Here we're talking about placing on the hands. Right? So here, what did it mean? It wasn't a license to teach or to lead a congregation. What was it for? Divinely sanctioned authority. What does divinely sanctioned mean? From one to another. It came from Moshe to Yeshua, to Joshua, Joshua to the elders, elders to others. It was a chain. It was a link and a chain. Right? It's divinely sanctioned authority. So therefore, he had a spirit of wisdom. Imparted holiness. Boy, how many rabbis do I know, quote-unquote Orthodox, do not have this spirit? Name a lot. Not going to do that. But they don't have this spirit. They're unholy in many ways. I'm going to mention Reformed, Conservative, right? Besides the point. So it gave them divinely sanctioned wisdom, authority. So they had a spirit of wisdom, right, that imparted holiness to their words and thoughts. So you needed it for certain things. You needed it for certain roles. So we're going to see what it represents today. But it was needed to serve in the Sanhedrin, in other institutions of Torah law. Jews came into Israel. Certain rules took effect. Right? How ordination was given. So, rabbinic ordination, or Semikhah as it's known, you need 3 judges. Right? Well, this comes from the Rambam. That you need 3 judges, and if one person had to have Semikhah. One of them had to have Semikhah from before. From someone before. Now, it could be given verbally, writing. What about the laying of the hands? Isn't that what the Torah says? It's about the laying of the hands. That was only an earlier generation. By the generation after Moshe and Yeshua, by Moses and Joshua, was done. He didn't have to do it. It wasn't done. Right? So it can be done verbally. It can be done in writing. Now, both the grantor and the recipients had to be in Israel. When this was given, I have to remember, Jews were in exile. So this sort of line is going to end, but we'll get there. Not only that, but you have to be an expert in all areas of Torah law. How many rabbis today can say they are an expert in all areas of Torah law? There are some, right? Probably not the majority. Right? Certainly probably not the majority. But they have to be an expert in all areas of Torah. Now also, this goes hand in hand. You have to be a proper character. You got to be a mensch. You got to be zealously observant of the mitzvahs and words of the faith. Comes on the Talmud Chagiga 15a or 16a. That says you can only learn under a rabbi if he himself is like an angel in your eyes. Now, does that mean he's perfect? No. Definitely doesn't mean he's perfect. But he starts calling other quote unquote, proper rabbis, calls them names, calls them out, says other things. And they are not heretics. Person rants and raves like a lunatic. How much knowledge the person has? Can have proper character. Right, we mentioned this before. One of my rabbis should be well. Once told me he learned under someone for a certain amount of time, a short amount of time. He then told me this person, brilliant. Tell me the brilliant. He said he didn't last 2 weeks. Why didn't he last 2 weeks? Because he said his character traits were horrendous. Horrendous. But how can someone quote unquote be a rabbi have bad character traits? Oh, that's a good question. We all have what the word, but you're held to a higher standard. So we say over here he's going to have proper character traits. Here's the guy's a blowhard, got a big mouth, downgrades or denigrates other rabbis with proper credentials. The person not only an absolute fraud, right? But what are they? What are they over here? Not even a mention. Not even a mention. I would say a person can have 10 times greater knowledge than me. 20, 30, 50, 100. You don't have proper character traits. What's it worth? Conflict language and wit. No worth anything. Because proper character traits are worth everything. Even if you know less, doesn't matter. You got to know your place, the mission of Perkei Avos says. Right? It says in Ethics for our Father. You got to know what you don't know. Can't even tell you. Ray can attest to this. You think people can barely read Hebrew, they're already Zohar, other things, misquoting things, talking like they talk a good game, they don't know diddly. They don't know diddly. You know what they say, you can't run before you crawl. You can't learn calculus without algebra or trigonometry. It's even funny seeing it by non-Jews doing these things. Right? Seeing it by quote-unquote people who think they know, come on. A lot of these people never gone through one tractate in their life from cover to cover. Right? They can be charismatic, they can be all kinds of things. But they misquote things and whatever. It's a tragedy. So you gotta have proper character traits. Zealously observant what the rabbis tell us. Also, the rabbinic ordination was tiered. There was specific knowledge for that have certain specific knowledge in areas of Torah. Even to know any one of them, you got to be capable of putting all areas of Torah knowledge. To be considered, the Gemara says, you want to be considered a Torah scholar, you got to know the 24 books. I.e. 24 books of the Bible. Bible, Tanakh, and the writing. Now, how many people today can say they're experts in all 24? Could be. 5 books of Moses. People are experts. Maybe some of the prophets. Maybe. Okay? You're not considered a rabbinic scholar if you don't know all 24 at the back of your hand. That's a different issue. But the ordination over here was an ascending degree. As the Talmud says. Sanhedrin 5a. First is Yora. Means he shall instruct. The ordination was for matters of religious and ritual. We're going to go through these. Yadin, he shall judge. Ordination qualifies the scholar to matters of civil, criminal, monetary. Yatir, b'choros yatir, means he shall permit, qualify the person to rule on matters of animal sacrifices, ritual purity. Right, before meaning the firstborn animal. Be able to see if there's any blemish or not, or whatever. Now, this chain of ordination lasted a while. It was unbroken for centuries until shortly after the Bar Kokhba rebellion. About 132 to 135, the Common Era. Bar Kokhba failed to reestablish a Jewish autonomy. What the Romans do, the Romans, they viewed Semikhah as a dangerous expression of Jewish desire for self-rule. Right? Sanhedrin, Jewish Supreme Court. So they're afraid. So if they had Semikhah, they destroyed the Sanhedrin. But now what did they do? Brutal program, persecution, and suppression. Unbelievable decrees. Semikhah was made a capital offense. Unbelievable consequences. Now, anyone who was there getting Semikhah, they were killed, they were executed. But it was also absolute destruction for the city which Semikhah was granted. And then you lived in the city, someone granted Semikhah, the whole city got pummeled if they got caught. The whole city demolished. The emperor also ordered complete destruction of all villages, settlements located within 2,000 arm lengths of the city's boundary. That's a good way to destroy things. By the 4th and 5th century, the rabbinic community fled. Makes sense? They went into Iraq, what is now Iraq, and there were a few remaining sages who still had this chain of Semikhah. But that eventually broke. Some say maybe continued beyond the 4th century. Right? But in any case, there is no modern Semikhah today. Right? That sort of got stopped. The chain got broken. So now the title rabbi, after the fact, can't be used. Right? Not really that common in the Talmud either. There are many, names people use in the Talmud for Torah scholars, but some are just used by their name. Right? Not called rabbi. And people think it's so important. I mean, okay. It's a title. The person worked hard for it. Okay. But in the bigger scheme of things, we're going to see what it really means today. So, a scholar would be referred to again as a chacham, a wise one. They have the position of authority. They were called a goat. Right? What does the goat mean? It means eminence. Now, what is modern, what we call rabbinic ordination? So now, really today, we look at it as a degree, as a diploma, so to speak. What does it certify? It certifies someone as having completed a course of study in Jewish law. Right? Noahide's going to study this course. We're not going to call them, rabbis. Right? We already have a name for them. We're going to call them Nagi. Right? In general. But it's like having a degree. Now, why did it come about this way? One reason is medieval university, they began to get diplomas and degrees. Now, Jewish community is always in flux, never know what the powers may do. You might have to flee in the middle of the night, which we've seen many times over. So they saw the value of crediting its religious scholars. So they called this academic degree Semikhah. Right, in commemoration of the classical Semikhah. But again, it's not the same. Because we don't have anybody or previous generations who have that same Semikhah from that time period. We don't have it. Then I think Itamar Ram of Rutenberg, the Rebbe of the Rosh, of Ben Asher, wrote a response to wanting to reinstitute it, but never was. Never was reinstituted. Now, caught on the European Jewish world, many communities didn't adopt it. They didn't really adopt it, but much later. So there's three levels of Semikhah. One is Rabbul Mami, i.e. we'll call it a BA, right, a bachelor's degree. So it came about more or less in the 20th century. The near Israel Rabbinical College in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, what does it certify? Certifies the holder as a teacher and is knowing the basic laws of synagogue ritual service observance of the holiday. Now, not all yeshivas issue the Semikhah or accept it as valid. So where it's valid, they can use it as rabbi. Now, let's look at what it is. You know the basic laws of synagogue ritual service observance of the holiday. That doesn't sound so impressive. Right? Anyone who's gone to synagogue on a regular basis for years can probably pass it. A little bit of study, but really it sounds so prestigious. Oh, he knows how to run a service. Well, he should know how to run a service. He's been going to synagogue since he's, 8 years old, right? And he's been praying 3 times a day. He should know how it goes. But anyway, that's the Rav Mani. Today's probably not so accepted. Then you have a second level. The second level is called Yura. We call it MA. Right? That's usually awarded for the course of study, let's say in Kashrus, i.e. dietary laws, or Shabbos, or Nidot, laws pertaining to married women, family purity laws, and Avelis, laws of mourning. Now, the final exam is given in this of the Heter, i.e. the dietary laws, very detailed. Very, very detailed. Subsection of dietary laws. That's probably the most, is in Easter and Heter, what's permitted, what's forbidden, i.e. dietary laws. A rabbi with this Semikhah holds the position of communal authority. He can be called, but he passed that. Right, or any of these. Yadin, that's totally different. That is the equivalent of a PhD. Right? So, tongue in cheek, we know what a BA is. An MA is more of it. And a PhD is either pilot higher and deeper or Papa has dough. I like that. Papa has dough. Anyway, we look at it equivalent. Come on, you guys should be entertained a little bit here. Right? A PhD, that's extensive study of laws of monetary and civil damage. This is pretty serious. This is what we call Dayam. Learning monetary law. It takes many, many years to go through. Right? Not only laws, monetary law, civil damages, but marriage and divorce. Now, for that, a person can call it a diet or a bit of court joke. But again, in the States, they're normally called rabbi or roe. Now, there's a fourth level. Fourth level is called heter hora. What does it mean, heter hora? Or Semikhah mora hora. It's an all-encompassing Semikhah awarded to rare scholars who master the entire body of Torah literature. Right? Very few people have it. Very few people. Basically means they know everything. How many people do we have today that know everything? Very few. Now, what's the obvious problem? There are a lot of problems. What's the obvious problem with modern day Semikhah? Right? One is, it's a certification of Torah law. So you got biblical interpretation, philosophy, theology. Obviously not part of the curriculum. Person can know the, 5 books of Moses backwards and forwards. Can know all these Mussar books. Books of ethics. Very good. What does that have to do with Semikhah? What does it do with rabbinic ordinance? What's irrelevant to Torah law? Not knowledge in other areas. Also an academic degree after course of study. But it's not based on righteousness and character. People with Semikhah are not particularly pleasant. Yeah, that's an understatement. For everyone said, I've heard him actually say it a number of times, someone who passes the appropriate exam to be a rabbinic court judge. A lot of places are going to hire that person because they've gone through the material. For every set, you got to check them out. You got to see how they act. You got to see where they learn. Person can have world-class knowledge, not be exactly the best person to work with. Right? You got to have proper character traits. If you see someone who's quote-unquote a rabbi without proper character traits, wrong. Again, it doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we're perfect, but people know. People are aware of what some people have done, people have said, other things. And it should be based not just on knowledge, but on character. Now, the person has Semikhah on one level shouldn't teach or answer from a higher level because they don't have that knowledge. I mean, if they have that knowledge, one thing. If they don't, they have to know their place. We mentioned this before. Some of the Yura, that's why Yaltin material, not there, not holding. Now, the Yeshivas over the last 15, 20 years, they got awarding Semikhah in very specific areas of study. Even the laws of Shabbos. You can even do that online. And you can do that online in different places. But you may not know any other area of Torah law. Okay, they might have gone through the material, very good. Right? But they have to know other things. For conversion, for example. The Rambam says you can go in front of 3 kosher Jews. 3 kosher Jews in order to convert. So you have to investigate each case. You have to see, is the person really holding? Is the person holding or not? That's what we got to see. That's what we have to see. Where they're holding. What they're doing. What exactly they're doing. That's what they have to do. They have to see where they're holding. Then we have to see. It's not enough what they know. Totally not enough what they know. Character traits, tremendously important. Right, but at the same time, so why I say that about the Rambam? I said that about the Rambam because the Rambam said it. But that's why we always hold by the Rambam. We have to see each individual case. How do we know these 3 kosher Jews? What do they know about conversion? What in the world do they know about conversion? Right? They may know nothing about conversion. They totally know nothing. So how can I rely on them? How in the world can I rely on them? I shouldn't be allowed to rely on them. That's what he's saying over. Such a person may be very cautious or holding himself as a rabbi. Why? He's not shouldn't discuss anything other than the laws of Shabbat. Now, if he knows other things, one thing. Specific laws. But in general, right, so you go to someone else should answer those questions. So there are many area-specific rabbis in the world today. They know one thing very well. It's very rare to find someone who knows a lot about a lot of different things. But you see, people are specialized. But many of them hold themselves out as Torah authorities. Give someone a little bit of knowledge, they go crazy. And they're unqualified outside their narrow areas of study. So it's been ingrained in me. Learn everything. To the best of your ability. You can specialize something for many years, okay? You be an expert in certain things, very good. What about other areas? What about going through shots? What about finishing the entire Talmud? It's good to be area specific. Don't look at that broader knowledge. Much broader knowledge. So there are rabbis that have certain, area of specialty. But guess what? They don't know anything about other things. They may think they're qualified to do such a thing. They shouldn't. So rabbis who teach on matters which they are not thoroughly versed, what does the Rambam say? The Rambam says the laws of Torah, learning Torah, chapter 5, halacha 30. What are they called? Evil, arrogant people. Now, someone's going to say, seems like there's a lot of evil, arrogant people out there. Yes. Unfortunately. Right? These people aren't even knowledgeable about one thing. They're already talking about many different things. Right? It's a joke. Now, a person can't get Semikhah today. Right? Or, the Semikhah we know it. Right? But a person could get Semikhah in one narrow area. Doesn't mean he's a Torah scholar to be a rabbi. You don't need to be a rabbi to be a Torah scholar. I normally say rabbi, I think, oh, he's a scholar. Doesn't necessarily mean that. Yeah, we're talking specific definition. He learns a certain thing, very good. Doesn't mean he's a Torah scholar. You don't have to study in Yeshiva to attain Semikhah. Person could or not, or you can study privately, be examined by a renowned Torah scholar. It's all about Torah Scholars. That's how you measure what a person knows. The greater scholars receive greatest recognition. They're accorded greater merit of their achievements. Makes sense? The more you know, the greater you are. Many of the greatest Torah scholars and authorities have 150 years father was smooth, but they just do everything. Thoroughly. They have to go to Rabbi Dr. Google. Right? They have the answer to the tip of their tongue. That every Jew should do. Should have intimate knowledge with Torah so well, they don't ask them a question they can answer like that. A lot of time, takes a lot of effort. But again, it's been ingrained in me. And by my teachers, no, don't do something specific. Just learn as much as you can learn. Go through shots. Go through the entire time. You say, well, you got involved in conversion. You're right. Almost by accident. There's no such thing as by accident, but it came out of the blue. Working with Noahide also. Right, but Ray can attest to this. There's just unbelievable amounts of fraud. People calling themselves rabbis, this, that, they don't know the heck what they're doing. Worse than being a fraud. They'll say things against me, against Rabbi Singer, against others. It's a conspiracy. They won't debate me. They won't do. Yeah, they're not going to give me credibility. They don't have any credibility. Someone spent 30, 40 years learning. Being an expert, you call them out. Come on. People can say what they want about me. I got a big ego, big shoulders. But there are people out there who don't even know basic things or questions. I'm going to give one example. Some fraudster does mass conversion. Men and women together. Right? Mass conversion in the ocean. Now, the person converts. Right? You have to go to a body of water, a mikvah. Right? That's status of a mikvah. And dunk. How do you dunk with clothes on? Okay, there's going to be might be a little bit of a moral issue over here. But they're all dunking on a video. Video out there, all going in the ocean conversion. Ludicrous. Totally ludicrous. They know what they know. They don't know. You can't have a barrier between you and the water. Clothing is a barrier. Other things are also a barrier, but we're not going to go there. Right? Somebody like that does such a thing. Such a fool. Right? And they're going to call me out. He should debate me. Why would I debate such an idiot? Give him a platform. For what? For what? The person's a fool. Don't give fools a platform. They don't give them credibility. They don't deserve credibility. I always say, and we're going to speak about choosing a rabbi in a second, right? But people can take their pop shots at me, it doesn't matter. But one thing will pick me off, and I'll call them out, is if they go against credentials. See, credentials are a big thing. Credentials means you worked hard, study like a fiend, master whatever you mastered. You have real credentials, you have real knowledge. That means you're perfect. That means you don't make mistakes. You have real knowledge. Someone's going to say, come on, your fraudster say such a thing. What are you going to give the time of day? You're right. A waste of time. But see, someone who has no credentials, and they call out someone who's been working and learning under great people for years and years. Okay, that's, they say in Hebrew, yesh gvul, there's a limit. There's a limit. You see, the person's the fool, you're right. I'm not going to let someone sit there and trash credentials. It's the opposite. You have no credentials. None. So, credentials are crucial. Derech Eretz, proper ways, speaking to others, crucial. Now, how do you choose someone to be a rabbi? It's always saying, we said the Talmud says. You have to look at a rabbi, someone who is like an angel in your eyes. So rabbis who are observant receive their training from Orthodox institutions. The other institutions, pretenders to the throne. I spoke about 2 weeks ago, right, on Tanakh Talk about who's the real Jew. Not conservative reform, spoke all about it. Someone was ordained as a reform rabbi, well, they probably can't read Hebrew. Probably don't know what's filling up. But subsequently became Orthodox, the ordination is valid. Why? Because of where they are now, not where they came from. Now, the person has to know where a rabbi got Semikhah, got rabbinic ordination. You get it online, is it from a recognized Torah Scholar, from a Yeshiva, it can all be valid. Depends on the source. Also, what did he study? Was it what area? I.e. dietary laws, long course study. Right? Another thing, is he affiliated with a particular institution? Even, maybe he's affiliated with open orthodoxy. Leave your brain open till your mind falls. Leave your mind open till your brain falls on the floor. They're not orthodox. Who are they associated with? It's the personal lone wolf. Lone wolf. They do their own thing. Avoid them like the plague. They have no accountability. Gave someone a golden opportunity a number of years ago. Golden opportunity, trashing me, Rabbi Singer, and Rabbi Skolback, and whoever. Gave a golden opportunity. I have to tell everybody in the Facebook, tell everybody who your rabbinic authority is to go to. I said everybody knows who mine is. And you'll still vouch for me, I hope. You'll still vouch for me. Go 25 years. Gave the person a golden opportunity. What was the answer? I have my source. So why not show? Show the entire world who your sources are. My guess and my hunch is you got no source. You're a bluff. I'm calling your bluff. That was the end of that. Trash me, more, this, that. It was a bluff. Total bluff. So a person, they don't have accountability, they do what they want. Follow somebody like that, you end up in the abyss. You end up in quicksand. You just sink. There's no credibility whatsoever. The person's a fraud. Got no accountability. You gotta find someone whose scholarship you have confidence with. Who's gonna take what you say serious, not just gonna blow you off. Now, if you always agree with everything your rabbi tells you, then that might not necessarily be so helpful. Why? Because you want someone's going to challenge you. Someone's going to open your mind a little bit. Someone might be a little bit out there. I don't know who I'm referring to. Right? Most important of all, you got to be consistent. They can't be jumping all over the place. They have to be consistent. If a person changes their opinion to suit the audience at hand, that's called in the vernacular being fickle. But when he's challenged, you should avoid the person. Rabbi said, you're a rabbi at the synagogue. And the synagogue is not working hard to drive you out, you're not doing your job right. You got to challenge people. Something you have to be controversial, be controversial. Sometimes you got to hammer them. They don't want to hear it, too bad. I don't have anybody over me except God and my Rebbe in that order. Right? You gotta be strong. Cofman's language, grew up in Boston. You can't be a wuss. You tell it the way it is. A lot of people don't want to hear that because we live in a cream puff generation. People want to hear good stories. My wife's conservative or reconstructionist rabbi would tell stories about a Rabbi Tzadik Moreno Rabbeinu Dennis the Menace. We quote from the pulpit. I would have said, quote, the Wizard of Oz. I would have said Doomsday. I would have even gone so far to say you quote Calvin and Hobbes. I was a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes back in the day. You gonna quote Dennis the Menace? Come on. There's a limit. Yeah, someone told me, yeah, these type of rabbis, they're there to entertain. So you go to synagogue to be entertained? Watch a movie. Go to the theater. Watch a sporting event. Go to synagogue to pray. Go to synagogue to learn. To want to be spiritually better. It's not about hearing what we want to hear. It's about the truth. It's about being honest. Some people don't like that approach. I had someone tell me, I can't even believe it. I was shocked. They said, Rabbi, you're very divisive. I almost fainted when I heard that. Divisive? Me? On. Must have been dropped on his head as a kid. I don't know. I'm not very divisive. Right? But that's been mutual respect. You got to respect people you deal with, people that you teach. Not everyone's going to agree with everything you say. That's a challenge. We're not looking for yes people over here. We're looking for helpers. We're looking for builders. We may not agree on everything. No one says you have to drink the Kool-Aid. I don't know, people still drink Kool-Aid? Whatever. Not everyone has to drink the Kool-Aid. But you have to get the message. And sometimes the message can be rough. It can be hard to handle. So, there's another issue over here. There's rabbinic credentialing, which is called Kabbalah. Right? Similar to the Hebrew word for mysticism. What does Kabbalah mean? That's totally different meaning. A license to practice. Let's say is a moil to perform ritual circumcision, or sofer, scribe, or shochet, kosher slaughter. An unlicensed moil, someone who does circumcision, never use them. Ever, as we would say in Boston. Right? They can kill the kid. They don't know what they're doing. Tremendous liability. Now, the religious requirement for license over here, there are certain laws for certification. Someone doing that type of, surgery, you don't want someone who doesn't know what they're doing or is uncredentialed, never take them for the life of you. A scribe, a sofer, there are a lot of unlicensed scribes. They produce non-kosher mezuzahs to fill in. So if they don't have a license, they're unacceptable. Why? Even if they're a Torah scholar. Why? Because you can't trust them. How do you know they're doing what they should be doing? They're unlicensed. It means they didn't learn from someone. Or if they did, they didn't get certification. So what does that tell you? I know better. Come on. You wouldn't trust somebody like that. A ritual slaughter of animals also needs a license. Very, very stringent here. The meat of an unlicensed shochet, not kosher. Even if he did it right. That meat's going to be discarded and sold in on kosher meat companies. Again, how can you trust him? He might be a rabbinic scholar. Big deal. But if you have a license. Oh, it doesn't mean anything. But if you have a license. Or not. Also, there's an idea of honor to the Torah Scholars. It says, rise before an elderly person, stand up before a wise man. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 30. There are a number of rules that talk about holy books. The concise code of Jewish law, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, 28, chapter 28, Halachos 4-10. We say you shouldn't treat sacred books, even those other than a Torah scroll. You have to teach them with respect. Placed on a bench, you can't sit on them. Unless they're placed on some other object whose height is at least a handbrake. Name's not directly on the bench. You can't place text on the ground or on your lap. Not respectful. Person may sit on the chest that contains other sacred books. But again, doing that for a Torah scroll forbidden. Humashim, the writings of 5 books of Moses, can be placed on any other book. Books of the prophets, sacred writings. Why? Because they're the holy. Books of sacred writings may be placed on books of the prophets because they're holy. Books of prophets may be placed on the books of sacred writings. Right? We can't place books of the prophets or the sacred writings on Chumash. They don't have that level of holiness. Torah scroll that's been worn out, placed in Genesi. You put it in a place where it's going to get buried. You can't use it. It's not respect. It implies other sacred texts, writings, other ritual articles, parsha sheets, other things. You can't burn them. Do not toss up texts or even works of laws or Agadah, homiletic explanation. Right? Also, turn them upside down. If you find it upside down, turn the right side up. Not respectful. You have to turn it right side up. You shouldn't urinate in the presence of holy texts. In emergency, at least go hand breath away. Don't make covers or mantles for a sacred article for an article is used for ordinary purposes. In other words, if something's supposed to be something sacred, used for something sacred, don't use something that's been used for ordinary purposes. What if it was done ex post facto? If you did it, you did it. Right? You really shouldn't do it. But if it's done, it's done. But if it was made from an article that was used for idolatry, no, that's different. Even after the fact's perfect. The last 2 things here is you can use a holy text for one's own benefit, i.e. stand it up for shade in the sun. Or as a screen. Right? So that his colleague does not see what he's doing. And again, it's not respect. Sun is shining too bright on the text one is studying. You can use another text for shades. Why? Does not use it for your benefit. Does not consider your own benefit. Place a sacred text under another text from which you're studying to raise it. That is okay. But you shouldn't place one text inside another so that one will not need to search afterwards for the place he was learning. Also, you shouldn't rule a notebook on top of the sacred text. The notebook is not sacred. Right? It should be placed on the side, not on top. Also, don't place paper and the like within the sacred text to be preserved. The person doesn't know which spot they're in a certain text. Right? So the person had, let's say a string of sentences that broke off. You can use it for that. All right, but seemingly using a piece of paper or whatever, it seems more of a disgrace. To do that. The last thing here is one who destroys sacred text. Been a long day here. Transgresses a negative command. All do not do so to the Lord your God. We need to rebuke binders of books who often glue the cover of books pages of sacred things. All right, they should be rebuked. Also, when giving old holy text to a Gentile binder to rebind, also have to be careful. They don't erase things or whatever. You should move the old covers and hide them, but don't use them for secular books. They have sanctity. So what do we see? There are laws governing how we deal with secular books, how we deal with Torah scholars, and all that. So, the way we look at rabbinic ordination today, in a lot of ways it's a joke. Okay, I'm not saying person, studied the certain things, study the laws of God. Very good. Study the dietary laws. Very good. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a full-fledged Torah scholar. Especially what he knows and other things also. Right? I'm all for people learning a lot of different things properly. Because a person specializes, okay, but what about other things? There is what to be said, you need experts in these things. True. Very, very true. But I would say, as much as that is true, person now has to know other things also. You have to know everything well. That's really the bottom line. So, there are people who may have certain titles, doesn't mean all well. It's totally different than what it meant before. And surely you can also be a rabbi, right? You have a woman. It's beyond nausea what goes on out there. And someone who's one of these Mickey Mouse rabbis, I don't have to respect it. I absolutely don't have to respect them. Heretics. Heretics I don't have to respect. To make fun of them. Whenever I want, technically. Because of what they I wouldn't say it's a good thing to do. I'd just say warn people about that and move on. You don't need to sit there and trash them, okay? Is that a problem with Lashon Hara? No. Only permissible. Permissible to make fun of idolatry. 100% permissible. So people say, come on, there's a limit, baby. Right? But people have to be warned. And, I'll be the first to agree, people have to be warned about other people who shouldn't be teaching and shouldn't be out there. They have to be warned. I'm also going to say, it doesn't mean every last second of every breath that you have, that's what you do. Waste of time. You do what you do, that's it. Move on. To base every lecture based on that, who says? You have to warn people, not saying that. Not saying that. That's not Lashon Hara. It's a big mistake, people. I don't want to hear this Lashon Hara. It's not Lashon Hara. If they are bona fide heretics, they're heretics. If it's true. That's all Lashon Hara. Where do you see it's Lashon Hara? So, that's what Semikhah is. That's what it represents today. This is how a person chooses a rabbi, which I think is very hard. Very, very hard. Because not everyone has, since a lot of things done virtually. I would say, you have to see whose personality you match up. Not everyone matches up with everybody. Some are stronger, some are more, more into Hasidus, more into Kabbalah, other things. You have to see what appeals to a person. But again, you have to see what they know. You have to see where they've been. And most important, you have to see how they act. And you have to see the whole picture. And then when you see the whole picture, you can make a decision. Is this for me? It's not for me. Whatever the case. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions? Again, a very important topic today. Very, very important topic. Because I think people get way carried away. First of all, someone's a heretic and whatever, you say, oh, it's Lashon Hara. You got to be careful who you listen to. And sometimes the only way you're going to figure it out is when you hear something and say, this sounds a little bit off. You have people to ask. Right? I always tell people, before you buy any books, if you're not sure, ask before you waste money. That's someone bought, a whole bunch of books. They bought a whole bunch of books. And then they came to me. Now, most books I know what's out there. I also know what's bad that's out there. They're like, 4 or 5 books. They're all bad. So they said, what do you think about these books? I said, you know how to flush? They're like, what do you mean? Because they're all heresy. They spend money. I'm not saying there is money. What money? Wasted money. You can't use these books. So be careful what you buy. If you go to artschool.com, feldine.com, you're pretty safe. Definitely pretty safe. I would say if anyone has any questions about books, should ask somebody. Ask your old Orthodox rabbi, whoever it is. Someone asked me, a student of mine asked me, should I get the book Sefer Gilgulim? It's about reincarnated souls and who's who in history. Right, and what's going on behind the scenes in Tanakh or whatever. But everyone's told me, one of my rabbis very much thinks in Kabbalah said, you have to have a lot of fear. A lot of fear of heaven going to do such a thing. The person's not converted, he's not Jewish. He's got plenty of what to learn. I gave him a very simple answer. No. That was easy. That's not appropriate. Not appropriate until you have a tremendous amount of knowledge. And even then, you got to see. If there's something you want to delve into. Yeah. Any other, so I'll take any questions. Any question, anything brought up? Or any general questions? Yeah. Off topic, go ahead. See how fast you can type. Go, go. Yeah, you can speak. Go ahead.
Hi, Rabbi.
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard this rabbi one time on YouTube say something that sounded way off the wall, and I avoided him like a plague since then. But what he said, what he claimed, was that Adam and Eve actually did the right thing when they sinned. So I don't know if he's trying to. I don't know. I don't.
There's an opinion that Adam did this on purpose in order that to bring evil inside of him. In order that if he brings evil inside of him, then every time he does the right thing, exponentially gets reward. Every time he does the wrong thing, exponentially he sins. So God, as the Talmud says, calls him a heretic. Calls him a heretic. But he said, I didn't want you to do that. And he brought death to the world. Totally brought death to the world. There is such an idea. You know, I'm not going to say not. There is such an idea, right? But God obviously says it's a problem. You can't reinvent the wheel. I told you not to do it. And that one event, now you see one event, oh, what does one thing do? Big deal, this, that. What does one thing do? It causes death to the entire world. Everyone has to die. According to Kabbalah, when a person dies, first person they see is the first man. And you tell them, because of this, I have to go through this because of what you did. You know that's part of his atonement. That's part of his atonement. Right? So there is such an idea. And that God tells him he's a heretic. Obviously it wasn't right. He didn't want to do it. God had to go to plan B. For sure it wasn't right. He said, no question. He thought he knew better. Now the Nevi'im, right? Spoken about this a lot. You know, they went into the Holy of Holies because they were in such, you know, they were had such an epiphany. But God said, I didn't want you to do that. He took them. He killed them. But they did it, they changed their mind for the sake of heaven, right? And then there's a command, Aaron the Kohen, and only go into the Holy of Holies once a year. Once a year, not whenever you want. Can't reinvent the wheel. But that's a pretty egregious sin over here. The fact that you think you know better than God, okay, God says, go ahead. You want to do it? God didn't necessarily disagree. He says, you're right, you can grow exponentially, you can sin exponentially. You can raise your soul, you can debase the soul. That's true. God didn't disagree with that. He just said you shouldn't have done it. I didn't want you to do it. Okay, you did it. Now I have to change everything. So for sure it was a sin. Even if God agreed, doesn't matter. He didn't want to do it. He gave him a command. He gave him a command. Don't eat from the tree. Oh, you think you know better? You think you know that this is God's greatest creation? And you think you really know better? He didn't disagree with what he said. He disagreed that he did it. And the fact that he did it, he paid the price. But for sure it was a sin. No question. Yeah, any other questions? All right. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to sign out. Anyone has any questions, feel free. Give me an email. Ray, I saw your question. I just didn't get a chance to get to it today. On Derek Hashem, we'll get to it. I'm going to sign out. And anyone has any questions, send me an email. Or if you want to set the time to speak. Otherwise, just sign out. Wish everyone a good middle of the day, almost end of the day for me. And everyone has